For joining us for a discussion about AirPR's Power Voice metric and how our customer Experian uses this metric to unify their global communications efforts. For those of you who are new to us, AirPR is the data science company for communications and PR, and our analytics software uncovers data about PR's direct connection to business metrics, so revealing the articles, authors, and messages that drive actual engagement with your brand. And now that you know a little bit about us, I want to introduce you to Kelsey from Experian and myself. Kelsey Audagnotti is a public relations and communications professional with in-depth corporate experience in the financial industry. She currently supports Experian's global corporate public relations team with media relations, social media, issues management, research and data analysis, reporting, and strategic efforts to maintain and drive the corporate reputation and business objectives. Kelsey's focus in her role is specifically on PR and communications measurement and analytics. Experian unlocks the power of data to create opportunities for consumers, businesses, and society. During life's big moments, from buying a home or car to sending a child to college to growing a business exponentially by connecting it with new customers, Experian empowers consumers and their clients to manage data with confidence so they can maximize every opportunity. Experian gathers, analyzes, and processes data in ways that others can't. They help individuals take financial control and access financial services, help businesses make smarter decisions and thrive, lenders lead more responsibly, and organizations to prevent identity fraud and crime. And for more than 125 years, Experian has helped consumers and clients prosper and economies and communities flourish, and they're certainly not done. And I, who is speaking to you, my name is Byrd. I'm a strategic account director at AirPR, and I work with AirPR customers on their onboarding, education, and ongoing support, and also make sure that our customers get maximum value from our platform and our data, and overall achieve their business objectives. My background's in PR and social media marketing, and I've worked for nonprofits, startups, and up to Fortune 100 companies. So today, we're going to cover a few different things throughout the presentation. Why measuring quality of your content and not just the quantity of it is important. Of course, going into a bit of an explanation about what power of voice is and why we truly believe it's the most powerful content quality metric. How you can shift your brand perception in time of a crisis in using power of voice. Some ways that you can break through, the noisy media landscape, also by using the data provided with power of voice. Some best practices in using this metric. The key questions that a metric like this can help answer for you and, of course, for your C-suite and executives. And lastly, how to unify PR and communications KPIs across an organization, especially a global one. So first of all, we've all seen reports that show total number of articles, which don't tell us much about the effectiveness of PR. Number of impressions, but we all know the entire readership of a publication doesn't see every article. And these numbers are often in the billions for a single campaign. And then there were AVEs, which the Barcelona principles of PR measurement have pretty much put to rest. So bottom line, none of these metrics really tell the story about the quality of PR efforts or the impact that PR actually has on a business. And these metrics have actually kind of hurt our industry and certainly our credibility. Even article count, it's an important metric to focus on, but it really focuses more on our output and not necessarily the outcome of our work. So that's why AirPR invented the Power of Voice metric in the first place, to help you uncover and discover the topics, the content, the publications, and of course the authors that actually drive value for your brand, and also where you can advance your communications efforts, and possibly by taking notes from competitors. Because we capture and process media coverage ourselves, we enrich and weigh every piece of content. And so we invented the Power of Voice metric to measure how content is resonating and focus on the quality and not just the quantity. Power of Voice is the first and the leading content quality metric in the communications industry, and it's the only metric that brings together content relevance, authority of the publication, social amplification, and sentiment, all in one number. No other measurement can really show how the authority of voice and not just share of voice of your brand compares to competitors in one single view. And also, unlike other metrics, Power of Voice enables you to analyze data by multiple dimensions, such as geography, languages, etc. So let me explain what the icons here on this slide are. So relevance is how relevant a particular article is to you or your competitors. This is kind of our automated way to determine if an article is more likely to be a feature story. How often does it mention your brand or your competitor's brand? How relevant is it to your business? And then reputation, that's the authority of the publication who actually publishes the article themselves. Repetition is tied to social media amplification. So how often is the article actually shared on social media? What's the repetition of that story being out in the public eye? And lastly, as a part of improvements that AirPR has recently made to our Power of Voice metric, we now also have the option to include sentiment. So we can drill into how positive, neutral, or negative articles also affect each brand, you and your competitors. And of course, positive or neutral sentiment articles, have a bit of a higher weight. So in addition to knowing how much coverage you receive, and in comparison to competitors, that would be share of voice, which can sometimes be a little bit misleading, especially when there's a lot of negative coverage, when there's a crisis situation. With Power of Voice, you can understand whether the coverage was meaningful, quality coverage that's meeting your brand objectives. So like share of voice, Power of Voice is a competitive metric, as I've mentioned, but it doesn't just compare the quantity like share of voice. Since it is looking at quality, it does give some actionable insights on what you can do to improve that quality over time. And for example, here in this chart, brand A, which is the brand in the green, is doing pretty well in terms of placing content in publications that are reputable, but they have some room for improvement in the relevance and the repetition or the social amplification of their coverage. And lastly, with the ability to incorporate sentiment into a Power of Voice score, you can specifically see how positive and neutral articles or negative articles affect your score, and same for your competitors, how positive, neutral, or negative impacts their coverage overall. And this is one of the main enhancements in our new Power of Voice 2.0 algorithm, which will be released soon. So now let's take a look at Experian and how they, as a global leader in consumer and business credit reporting, as well as marketing services, how Experian is using Power of Voice to drive communication strategy, how they're shifting their brand perception and standardizing their PR measurement and reporting across their global region. I'll turn it over to you, Kelsey, to walk us through all of that.
Thanks, Kelly, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I just want to get started right away by saying how important measurement is, and it's something that we've learned over the last 4 years on the value of measuring your work and the value it could really bring to your strategy, as you will see over the next few slides here, what we've learned. But it's a very important key component to your communication strategy. It's what my primary role is at the company. Just for an example of how Experian takes measurement so seriously, we measure and evaluate performance several times a month. So whether it's looking at specific articles and how it performed, or how we can take content a step further to looking at it holistically at where we stand so we can make strategic decisions. Our primary goal is to use a data-driven, metrics-based approach to judge our performance and enhance the effectiveness of future campaigns to achieve our overall objective, to be known as a consumer champion and an innovator in data and technology. This discipline is what has helped us to understand what steps we need to make in order to achieve our goals. So I thought I'd share just how we created this measurement standard for our company and what it means to have a data-driven approach. So we deploy an outcomes-focused approach to measuring and monitoring the impact of external communications activities. We standardized our measurement metrics to ensure consistency across our regions and enable the regions to directly influence global results. We also established regional performance targets and track progress to ensure communications activities are delivering value. And then we use this data and insights and the trends from AirPR to inform our external communications programming. So meeting several times a month helps us really implement actions for our external programming. So it wasn't always this way. It took several years of playing with the data and looking at our data. And one of the biggest challenges we found was that Experian is in a highly regulated and rapidly changing industry. So it was imperative that our PR team has a strong pulse on the media landscape at all times. Over the past few years, we faced a number of issues in our industry that impacted our reputation, which we needed to address. It also meant that we needed to shift our brand perception, not just for ourselves, but as it relates to our industry and our peers. This is where AirPR became a really valuable tool for our team. Looking at AirPR data over time, we realized that while we were winning in share of voice and volume of coverage, power of voice analysis revealed that our news was not penetrating through the noise and not making an impact as much as we thought. We really needed to produce and distribute more meaningful content to break through the sheer volume of industry coverage. One of the big challenges we faced as well from a global perspective was the inconsistency in reporting metrics across our markets and the accuracy of our results. So just to give some context, some of our markets weren't reporting at all, which can be shocking. Others were reporting number of press release pickups and syndication numbers, its impressions, number of articles. This caused confusion among all of our business leaders, as you know, if you can imagine, our managing director in Brazil is communicating its results, media results, to our global CEO, and if each region is communicating something different, the confusion and the credibility of it all was just a massive headache. And we were challenged to make sure that we could unify all these results and have a more meaningful analysis of how we were performing. And it also we didn't understand how our reputation in media outlets was faring globally. So it revealed that teams were not functioning in silos and not collaborating as much as we could have been in producing effective campaigns. So this is where power of voice has become one of our key metrics, because it helped us address all of these challenges head on. So today I want to walk through how we're shifting our strategy and how that drove positive voice changes and what it means in terms of brand perception and issue management, breaking through the noise and reporting consistency. Power of voice allows us to see what pieces of coverage are moving the needle reputationally. A passing mention of our brand does not necessarily make consumers or clients remember us, understand our capabilities, or know how we're making a difference in society. So in addition to tracking comprehensive coverage, we measure influential coverage. So coverage that's on our target media list, where Experian is in the title or mentioned more than twice within an article, positive or neutral in tone, compared with our competitors. So as an example of our media volume, we average about 25,000 Experian stories each quarter globally. So it's just a massive number of articles that it was overwhelming, and we weren't sure which pieces of coverage were actually providing value. So when we took it a step further and dicing the data, we were averaging about 1,100 stories in influential media each quarter. So influential media represented about 4% of our total coverage. Diving deeper into those 1,100 stories, with Power of Voice, we were able to derive actions such as focusing on specific topics, reaching out to specific journalists, and adding in brand sentiment analysis. So like I said, this was a process. We've been with AirPR for about 4 years now. And I would say the first 2 years, we were just playing with the data, reporting on, using the insights to report on a campaign level, which was really great with speaking with our marketing partners and helping us to drive actions from there. And so you could see in the chart above, this is about 4 years worth of data. And what was concerning to us was that we were winning in share of voice and volume of coverage, but when you look at power of voice, it revealed that we were not making an impact like we thought we were. So you could see the decline from FY16 to FY17. We decided to analyze competitor and industry coverage using power of voice to see what we could improve on and understand why certain articles were making an impact more than others. We learned that the more quality articles with headline mentions, articles solely about an entity and their data and capabilities were providing more impact, were proving to be more impactful. So as you could see, as Kelly mentioned previously, the reputation of the publication, the relevance, and then when it comes to social engagement. As we started to roll out our new strategy in FY 2018, we were hit with an industry issue that impacted our reputation, and as a result, delayed our strategy. The share of voice and power of voice data was more revealing than ever. We needed to be precise and focus on quality coverage. It also showed that we needed to analyze our coverage by brand sentiment because our good news was being drowned out by the sheer volume of press in our industry. In FY 2019, we shifted our strategy by telling more compelling stories focused on our brand capabilities rather than shooting for high volumes of coverage. And in the first months of this last year, we're looking very strong in rebuilding our foothold with media. And I will say one of the things with with power of voice is it encompasses everything. So with the evolution of PR and where we've come from, article volume is just totally an outdated metric. And if you're going back to your marketing partners or your leadership, we saw that we were trying to hit the high numbers of volume every year, but that's such a struggle given the context of the nature of our business, right? We can't control the volume of coverage. And so if we previously we had a dip and we'd have to explain why our coverage wasn't as high compared to years past, or we just needed to take a step closer and looking at why providing a metric that was more valuable to our leaders. So while the aftermath of our industry issue continues, we're diving deeper into the coverage we're seeing with our flaws and where we need to improve.
Kelsey, it sounds like you're using this data. I mean, clearly you're using it effectively, right? Seeing that increase in the power of voice from FY18 to FY19 there on the right, and using this effectively to shift brand perception and create content that breaks through that industry noise. Can you give us an example of how power of voice helps you determine which topics to focus on to tell compelling stories for Experian?
Sure, yeah. So at Experian, we have pillars that we want to be known for as a company, and power of voice allows us to see if we're achieving the media results in those themes and how powerful the articles are. So it gives us a hard, unbiased data that we can deliver to our leaders. This reinforces how PR is being effective and contributing to the company's success. So coupled with how the platform is built, you can dive deeper into these results. For example, we recently launched Experian Boost, which it helps people influence their credit scores almost instantly. This launch was clearly focused on our key capabilities and our industry innovation. It received widespread press, and it helped us increase our positive news coverage and power of voice. Using power of voice, we are seeing which reporters and publications drove the most impact, providing us insight on who we should target for future campaigns or additional follow-on stories. It also helped us identify new reporters interested in the topic and allowing us to build new relationships.
Well, tying power of voice back to media relations and opportunities to build relationships there is pretty impressive. So can you explain and tell everyone a bit more about how did you zero in on specific reporters and publications to target?
Absolutely. So for example, when we looked at the journalists who authored these articles and which publications they appeared, as we were doing the analysis, we noticed that some of these publications were already on our target media list, but some of the authors we had not spoken to previously. So we really leveraged the author intelligence tool that AirPR provides. We were able to learn more about the reporters, which publications they write for, what other topics they write about, overall publication activity, their general sentiment, and other critical information. So we use this background to craft a compelling pitch to connect with each reporter in a meaningful way. And I will say it's really helpful as well too when you're looking at author intelligence, the trends and when that reporter has actually previously written about your company. So it identifies those articles and helps to make some smart decisions when pitching. So one of the things that we learned is that it's important to segment your coverage by sentiment. So how are we supposed to find out whether our positive and neutral coverage is making any headway? And taking a deeper look at negative sentiment if issues are really making an impact. So when we isolated our negative coverage, we saw how the news was truly impacting our brand and learned how to communicate to our senior leadership in real time. Specifically using power of voice, we can show leaders that certain articles or sensitive topics may not be as impactful as we thought. It could reveal another topic that is more impactful than that we need to address. So for example, when you're looking at an article that may be negative in tone and it just hit, an example that we had an issue hit and we were able to set the tone with our leaders and say, you know what, this is a negative article and it seems very damaging to the brand, but in reality, it's not going anywhere. And it helped us be able to make a decision on how we action that. So just monitoring the article specifically with social media traction and if it's not going anywhere, why add to the fire, so to speak. So as opposed to the previous chart, what we're looking at here is low share of voice and power of voice, which means that the volume and authority of news with negative sentiment has decreased. So in 2015, we encountered an increase in negative press, and when we did a post-mortem analysis, it revealed that our PR strategy in dealing with the news was effective, and we were able to see that articles that mentioned us focused on others involved. So the power of voice has helped us to develop the appropriate PR strategy during and post-crisis. While we were able to achieve great results with our crisis management strategy, in 2009, we still have to address a lot of industry concerns. So one of the key takeaways is that when you're looking at your negative coverage with power of voice, we could determine if certain topics continue to generate news, and if we needed to continue to address this in our media relations plan. And it helps us to analyze reporters and create a target media list of those that we need to reach out for additional education. So using quality to break through the noise. So like I mentioned previously, we have a high volume of coverage. So we use power of voice to understand if our positive and neutral content is breaking through the noise. And here you can see the shift in data and how quickly and strongly a brand's proactive news can be impacted by external events. You could see the decrease there in FY18. With the issue that impacted our industry being so massive, we had to segment our news by brand sentiment in order to see if our proactive outreach was actually resonating. Our positive and neutral news was still not resonating as powerful as we wanted. Since we implemented our new strategy using what we learned with Power of Voice, we've been seeing some great results with just 3 months left into the fiscal year. While our share of voice is lower than previously, power of voice is much higher, telling us that our high quality content and compelling stories are really resonating with our audience. So this is where we decided to standardize our global communications KPIs. Power of voice is unbiased and provides a holistic view of our brand globally that we can trust is accurate given the way the metric is designed. We can see what content is impacting different regions. So something in North America can be making a significant impact in Asia Pacific, both positive and negative news. So revealing that was really powerful because we're able to feed our different regions, and because we meet so frequently, we are able to help say, hey, this topic is trending, that happened in North America. Why don't you guys take that and do some owned content, for example, or some social media promotion in your region based on the topic because it's popular in your region. So we now have a set of standard KPIs, including power of voice, that we report on globally on a monthly basis to our regional CEOs and to our global CEO. So what we measure is share of media. So it's still important to understand what your branded perception is across your media landscape. So we do want to know the volume of coverage. It is important. But you really want to dice your data and look at your influential coverage, the most prominent metric that we focus on in Experian. So it's AirPR deemed influential. It's on your target media list. It can be, you can really customize it with the AirPR platform, but with Experian, we have, we measure articles where Experian is in the title or mentioned several times within an article, and that's positive and neutral in tone. So we compare this with our competitors with the same filters as well. And we focus on this metric most prominently when we analyze the articles throughout our report. So we also leverage the new capability in Power Voice 2.0 to incorporate sentiment directly into the metric. And then we also look at our influential versus comprehensive coverage. So how much of our influential media is a percent of our comprehensive media coverage total, which has been really interesting to track over the last year and seeing the increase as well in that percentage. And then we look at the volume of coverage in brand themes. So this is key message pull through in North America with leveraging the NEO tags in AirPR. And then we also look at just what percentage of our articles hit, tech and innovation or being a consumer champion as well. And then it's also important to look at your brand sentiment as a standalone measurement. That's super important. With sentiment, it really impacts the power of voice, I think. So I would make sure you focus on that as well. Each region has its own target media list and its own set of performance targets. So with Experian, we're a high performance company, and that bleeds down to how we perform as employees and as teams. So we have goals around all of these metrics. So we want to increase influential media by, let's say, 10%. And each region is responsible for creating those targets as well. So to summarize, while counting passing mentions doesn't really tell us anything or move the needle for us, Power Voice does allow us to see which content is instrumental in shifting brand reputation. It gives us actionable insights on which articles drive social engagement so that we can develop more content around a specific topic to pitch to the media, post on own sites, or amp up our social media promotion with marketing efforts. It allows us to break down pieces of coverage by target media list and dissect coverage by sentiment. In our industry, it's also key to analyze the negative coverage or sensitive content. By knowing Power of Voice, we can level set our executives and help craft an appropriate communications response plan. Finally, while KPIs are not like impressions, aren't accurate and do not resonate with the C-suite, Power of Voice helps us measure communication performance in a way that speaks directly to our executive team. So, for example, we launched a huge campaign in North America, and our impressions were in the billions. Okay, the US population is roughly like 328 million or something like that. It doesn't add up, and smart leaders immediately began to question the accuracy and validity of our work, like in our case. Our CEO kind of laughed at us when we provided some impressions that were in the billions, and he was just like, okay, that's nice, but what actually worked? So like our leaders, more than likely your CEO is interested in the following: brand sentiment, how we're perceived in the media and by consumers. Is your company being seen by our key clients, investors, and consumers? Are the stakeholders remembering what they read about us? Impressions and number of press releases do not help you answer these questions, but Power of Voice does. So I thought I'd share a little bit of kind of the best practices we've learned when it comes to creating our measurement standard. So number one is analyzing how your story is being received in the greater context of your industry and how that impacts your coverage. If you're looking at just the volume of coverage and impressions, you're doing a disservice to your brand. Those are vanity metrics that are uninformative and do not resonate with your C-suite. Look at your power of voice versus your share of voice and break out your coverage by brand sentiment. We look at our coverage overall, negative only, and then positive and neutral articles combined. So, and looking at the key takeaways for our team, these are ones that are at the top of the list for us. So, global team alignment. This was huge. So, by aligning all of the regions to reporting into a single leader, excuse me, we were able to create standards and policies that was consistent across our organization. And it created accountability as well. So we focus on quality coverage and not just quantity. So we pitch compelling stories and products, and I challenge you to ask yourself when you're pitching, is this a topic or product worthy of a headline mention? If it's not, is it worth pitching? Target influential media, so leveraging power of voice and author intelligence. And then a dedicated measurement team with monthly accountability with regional leads. Shift strategy if need be. And then report the facts and be honest to your senior leadership on the status of your performance. Challenge your team and set KPI goals and reward your team's performance.
So Kelsey, it sounds like power of voice is a key metric, of course, for Experian to quantify the success of your communications efforts in a way that's meaningful not only to you as a lead for global reporting, but also to the global comms team and to your executives at Experian, in that it does combine the brand relevance, the publication authority, and the social media amplification of coverage. But can you tell us how much more powerful would it be if you put more emphasis, on content relevance and directly factor in the article sentiment, like you've done with some of that analysis, since that's a part of some of the improvements that that AirPR is making to our overall power of voice?
Yeah, so previously, and like many of the attendees here today probably have reported on, the volume of coverage. And when you're doing your recap reports, you're probably highlighting your best pieces of coverage. And more recently, with the evolution of social media, you're adding in, how well those articles performed. But with power of voice, it combines all of those three. So it's a really powerful metric, and I think represents the evolution of reporting in PR. It blends everything that we wanted to analyze into one metric. So up until now, when looking at power of voice, we've had to dive deeper by adding layers such as tone and how often we're mentioned in the article and if we're in the headline. So we did this using the filters and Boolean searches, and with Power Voice 2.0, it eliminates all of those extra steps. And by changing the relevance rating and adding tone, it becomes a very powerful metric that is unbiased and one we can trust in providing real intelligence to our media performance.
So, of course, it seems like this is answering, in general, the most important question. Are you moving in the right direction? Are you actually making progress and having an impact on your brand's perception overall in the public? And, are you, as your kind of fiscal year comparison chart showed, are you increasing thus your power of voice for your brand over time, especially in comparison to your competitors? So thank you, Kelsey, for going through all of that with us and sharing not just how you're specifically using the Power of Voice metric, but also some of the results of how that's been received by your global team and your executive leadership, and how you plan to continue to use it moving forward. So now we'd like to open it up for some Q&A and let everyone who is attending the webinar and who has been listening in ask questions of Kelsey or of myself about how Experian is using AirPR's Power Voice metric for their global communications, maybe specific questions you had based on some of the information that Kelsey went through, or maybe just some general questions about our Power Voice metric. And you can use the question box right in the GoToWebinar to submit those to us. But it looks like we have a couple so far, so I'm going to go through, Kelsey, and ask you some of these. So the first question is, since you look at both share of voice and power of voice for competitive analysis, how do you think about them in conjunction with each other?
So I believe that they are both really important metrics. You have to know where your company stands in the media landscape. So like I mentioned before, Experian has on average 25,000 articles a quarter globally, and it's a ridiculous amount of coverage. So how do you weed through all of that? You have to slice the data in order to help you understand your effectiveness. And that's where Power of Voice really comes in handy. And you're able to look at articles and see how it compares to your competitors and what your competitors are doing as well and where their strongest articles are. So if you aren't doing a deep dive analysis in your competitive coverage and your industry analysis of coverage as well, like it's a whole package. You really have to analyze and know your landscape in order to be an effective PR manager, especially in this day and age where the sheer volume of everybody's a reporter, so it's just weeding through who is the most important for you to talk to.
Great, thank you. Someone else asked, do you have enough experience to link Power of Voice metrics to other key KPIs that are important to Experian's management? And a follow-up question to that is your experience that Power of Voice is a better predictor of key performance than share of voice?
Definitely. So it goes hand in hand. So Power of Voice has been something that's been it's been a process with our leadership and understanding, but once you explain what Power of Voice is, our leaders totally jumped on board and got it. So for us, it's been reporting both really is eye-opening.
Okay, great, cool. So sounds like that combination is still pretty helpful to look at the quantity, the overall coverage volume, but also the quantity. Another question came in. How many competitors do you track as part of the Power of Voice metric? And do you think that that's maybe like the right amount of competitors to track? And also, what's the threshold you'd apply in terms of competitor size? Like, is there a way that you decide which competitors to choose to look at for Power of Voice?
Yeah, so we globally track 10 competitors that are the most relevant to Experian. I will say from a regional perspective, they can, it's probably better for each to be measuring your regionally as well. So when we look at our competitors, it's really the main ones that we're competing against, but we're such a huge company that, I mean, we could really compare with probably hundreds of companies. But I think from a global standpoint, overall, you should measure your top competitors. But also when it comes down to your business units, we also have a business unit that tracks their core competitors. So I think it just depends on your business, but I think it's really valuable to be comparing your top.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we could certainly look at hundreds, but then the analysis might be a little more challenging.
Yeah, and you want to be apples to apples a little bit too. I mean, we're such a big company, so it's just depends on your industry, and I'm happy to to chat with people offline too on specifics, but to help them understand what might be best for them.
Sure. Thank you for offering that.
Yeah.
Someone else asked me a question. Can I explain again all the metrics that feed into Power Voice? And they noticed that negative sentiment in Power Voice was different from the overall. Yes. So with our new, we've mentioned a few times that AirPR has made some improvements to the Power Voice metric, and the key one being that we now have two different views available. So one that automatically filters to weight positive and neutral sentiment a bit higher in Power of Voice, and then another one that includes all sentiment articles, positive, neutral, or negative, which is what we've been looking at to date. So the things that feed into Power of Voice, there are 3 R's. We went for alliteration. So it's relevance, reputation, and repetition. The relevance is how often does the article mention your brand or your competitor's brand, and that's our like automated way to try to determine if something's more likely to be a feature story. Like, does it mention you more often? Of course, then it's more relevant to you and it has more power in its voice for your brand. The reputation, that's based on the publication that's publishing the article and the overall authority of that publication in the media. And then the repetition, the third factor, is based on the social amplification. So from that publication, how often are their articles shared on social media? So the example I always give is, you know, something might be published, let's say in the New York Times, right? That's clearly a very reputable publication, even from a global perspective. But maybe there's something that's published by Kelly's blog. And I am certainly not going to be a reputable outlet with a lot of authority, but maybe my blog posts overall get, let's just say, like hundreds of thousands of shares on Facebook and Twitter, and maybe people pin my articles to save for later. And so the repetition, how often those articles are shared on social from that publication, can still help increase the power of voice. And then the improvement or addition that we've made is that you now also will have the option to filter by sentiment and focus in a little more on those positive and neutral articles. Someone else asked, I'm interested to hear a little bit about how the 4 components of Power Voice come together to achieve the overall metric, which hold the greatest weight, and how is that established? So, I mean, in terms of what holds the greatest weight, as a part of our improvements to Power Voice, we are focusing more on relevance. So we will be looking a little bit more strongly at how often an article does mention you. And that way, even if you're looking at something that doesn't necessarily have a positive sentiment, you can still get some pretty key insights, and then, you know, obviously actions and next steps that you can take as a result of that about coverage that's talking about your brand more and also about your competitors more. So, you know, if you're using the tool to identify crisis situations, or if you're trying to stay on top of anything like that in the industry overall. As you look at your competitors, you can see those articles that are more relevant to each brand, that are really kind of honing in on each one. And then let's see, this question is for Kelsey, I think. Can you give an example of how your target media list changed after you moved to Power of Voice as a KPI? And did your journalist outreach or media outreach strategy shift?
Yeah, so when you're looking at Power of Voice, so I mean, when you're crafting your target media list, right, you have an idea of who the key players are in your industry, but with the media landscaping changing, gosh, so frequently, that influencers come and go. And so with Power of Voice, we're able to filter out and see, A, is our target media list accurate? And it also reveals, new opportunities to reach out to people that weren't on our radar before. And this has been kind of an evolution over the last year of looking at this, and globally as well. So I would say it's been revealing when you're diving into it each month to find out if you're on point with who you think you are targeting, and then being able to add to it. So we have actually multiple target media lists. I mean, we measure the same ones month over month, but then we start adding in target media lists by campaign based on our learnings from the previous month. So when we meet monthly as a team, we look at specific campaigns and see if there's anybody that wrote about our launch or our study or product, or and if it's new, how can we expand on that relationship? So as a team, we discuss, well, okay, what's coming up that we can maybe pitch this report or an add to this campaign, or this publication reaches, has high volumes of syndication. So, one that comes to mind is patch.com. Like, that one came out of nowhere for us. And so that's something that that we would like to explore further, or other top tier publications may be interested in a new topic that that we weren't necessarily thinking they would be interested in. So it's just constant evaluation and discussing with your team.
Great, thank you. It looks like that's all the questions we received. So I'd like to do one final call out to see if anyone has any top of mind questions for Kelsey in terms of how Experian uses Power of Voice, or for me generally about the metric. We'll just hold for another minute to let anyone else submit any questions. And if not, we will give you the treat of ending the webinar early. Okay, Kelsey, there's another question for you, just saying, are you using Power of Voice as it is generated, or are there still a few manual steps where you tweak the data? Like, do you or the regional PR managers tag content? Do you like correct or reset sentiment, or anything else?
It's a combination of both. So with our industry, it's a little, with brand sentiment, some content that we produce, we have a whole fraud division. So sometimes it's deemed as negative, but with AirPR, we've been able to totally flag those articles, and then they're able to switch the brand sentiment for us, and it's kind of machine learning as we go. So when it comes to brand sentiment, we modify occasionally, but for the most part, it's pretty spot on. What was the second half of the question? I'm sorry, Kelly.
No problem. For example, are you tagging content or like resetting sentiment? Is there anything that you do to modify the data before you're using and presenting Power of Voice?
No, we really, well, we go through and comb the coverage to make sure it's, it's accurate. but we look at it holistically, and then if it's a specific campaign, that's where we dive in deeper as well. So if we have more of a consumer campaign, we'll filter our coverage to just look at that coverage and where the strongest power of voice articles were, and then we make actions for that.
Okay, great. That makes sense. Thank you. I think that's all the questions we have. So we'll give everyone the treat of ending the webinar early, especially if you're jumping to something else in a few minutes. So thank you again to everyone for joining us today. We will be sending through the recording of the webinar so that you have that. You can share that with any colleagues or anyone to whom this might be interesting. And for anyone who wasn't able to attend today. And if anyone has other follow-up questions that you'd like to submit, you can always just email info@airpr.com, and we can either put you in touch with Kelsey or get back to you on more information about our Power of Voice metric. But thank you again for your time today and for joining us today. And thank you, Kelsey, for walking us through your use case of Power of Voice.
Yeah, and I know it's a lot of information and it's really hard to cover. So if anybody has any more specific questions or would like to talk offline on something, I'm happy to connect with you and dive deeper. I know it's a lot of content overall. So,
well, thank you again for offering that, and hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day and of the week. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks, Kelly.